are going to demonstrate to them that we have the right technology. We are going to demonstrate to them that we are a very fierce competitor.
Fiat just confirmed that a tiny electric vehicle, one that's actually smaller than a golf cart, is coming to the United States. In Europe, it isn't even classified as a real car. It has an 8-horsepower motor, and the whole thing is under 100 inches long. But despite all that, it's generating a level of excitement that even Fiat didn't expect. Today, we're looking at why this $11,500 micro EV is arriving now, what makes it so different from anything Americans are used to, and how it might shake up the future of short-distance travel. Because once you hear where it can legally drive, and where it absolutely can't, you might start wondering who this vehicle is even meant for. The Topolino, what it is and why it's so unusual. The Fiat. Topolino is one of those vehicles that makes you stop for a second and ask yourself if you're really looking at something meant for the road or a prop from a futuristic cartoon. And honestly, that's part of the fun. Before we dig into why it's coming to the United States, we need to get clear on what this little machine actually is, because calling it a car doesn't quite fit. In Europe, the Topolino isn't even legally considered a car. It sits in a special category called a quadricycle, which is basically a tiny electric vehicle that lives somewhere between a scooter, a golf cart, and a miniature commuter pod. Fiat didn't design it from scratch either. It's actually a rebadged version of the Citroën Ami, which has become one of the most recognizable micro EVs in Europe. Even though the Topolino looks cute, cheerful, and almost toy-like, it represents a very different way of thinking about how people move around cities. The moment you look at the numbers, the picture becomes even clearer. The Topolino is shorter than 100 inches from end to end, which means it is smaller than many golf carts and almost unbelievably tiny when compared to what most Americans consider a normal vehicle. It runs on an 8-horsepower electric motor, carries a 5.5 kilowatt-hour battery pack, tops out at just under 28 miles per hour, and offers around 47 miles of range in European conditions. These specs are intentionally limited. This is not the kind of vehicle you would ever take on a highway or use for long road trips. It is built for very short, very simple trips inside neighborhoods, campuses, gated communities, and tight city streets where speed is unnecessary and space is the real challenge. You might wonder how something this tiny can still feel like a real vehicle rather than a novelty ride. The answer is that the Topolino leans completely into ultra-minimalism. Everything about it is stripped down to the basics. In one version, it does not even have traditional doors. Instead, it uses fabric straps or open sides, which cuts the weight down even further and keeps the cost low. The wheels are small, the frame is light, and the interior is designed to be practical rather than high-tech. Think simple surfaces, easy clean materials, and just enough storage to be useful. It gives you exactly what you need to get around, and almost nothing more, and that's part of its strange charm. So, why would any car company create something this minimal in the first place? The answer becomes obvious when you step inside. The cabin has 2 seats placed side by side, but staggered slightly, so the driver has a little extra elbow room. The windows slide upward instead of rolling down, which gives the whole vehicle a retro, slightly quirky feel. There is no big touchscreen, no complicated digital interface, and no overwhelming list of buttons. Instead, Fiat makes space for your phone, which is what most people use for music and navigation anyway. It sounds incredibly simple, but that is the point. The Topolino is designed for drivers who want an easy, low-stress experience without the extra layers of tech that weigh down modern cars. Once you compare the Topolino to vehicles sold in the United States, the differences become even more dramatic. Nothing currently sold by major American car brands looks or behaves anything like this. Most electric vehicles in the United States focus on high range, fast charging, strong acceleration, and advanced software features. The Topolino deliberately ignores all of that. It is much closer to a street-legal golf cart than a regular electric car, but it has the playful design language and personality of a European city pod. This is where the Topolino starts to raise real questions. Is the United States ready for a vehicle that moves slowly, takes up almost no space, and prioritizes affordability over performance? Could something this tiny actually work in American cities? Or will people think it is too unusual to take seriously? The answer depends on how people think about everyday transportation. Short trips make up a huge portion of daily driving for most Americans, even though they use full-sized vehicles to complete them. If you only need to go half a mile to a store or across a campus, a low-speed electric pod like this might make more sense than a traditional car. And as cities get more crowded and parking gets harder, the idea of a compact EV starts to sound a lot more appealing. All of this makes the Topolino fascinating on its own, but to really understand why micro-EVs like this exist and why Europe embraced them long before the United States did, we need to look at the bigger story behind urban mobility and the environments that shaped vehicles like this. That story goes deeper than most people realize, and it helps explain why something this unusual might actually have a future in America. How we got here: Europe's micro-EV movement. Europe's micro-EV world didn't appear out of nowhere, and once you understand the environment that shaped it, the Topolino suddenly makes a lot more sense. European cities are built in a way that naturally pushes people towards smaller vehicles. The streets are narrow, the neighborhoods are dense, and a lot of the older districts were designed long before anyone imagined cars that weigh several thousand pounds. Many cities even restrict where full-sized vehicles can go, especially in historic areas where space is tight, and local governments want to cut down on noise and pollution. So instead of forcing giant cars into tiny streets, Europe created a special category of ultra-compact vehicles called quadricycles. These are light, slow, and inexpensive, and they fit the scale of European daily life much better than a traditional car. When you look at it that way, the entire micro-EV movement starts to feel less like a trend and more like a natural evolution of how people already move around their cities. The Citroën Ami is the best example of how this all came together. When it launched, the Ami looked like nothing else on the road. It has a friendly, cartoon-ish front end, oversized windows, and body panels that are completely symmetrical, which means the left door and right door are literally identical. Citroën did this to cut costs, but the result was so unusual that it instantly stood out. Videos of the Ami spread quickly, especially ones highlighting its tiny size or showing people trying it for the first time. And then, of course, there was the Monaco flip. A famous clip showed an Ami tipping over while taking the sharp Grand Hotel hairpin, a turn usually filled with Formula One cars, not micro-EVs. That moment actually made it more famous. People realized just how light and compact it was, and the video turned into something people shared partly for shock value and partly out of curiosity. So, why did a tiny electric box with almost no horsepower become so popular in Europe? The answer lies in how Europeans use their cars. Most daily commutes in major European cities are short, often just a few miles, and parking is a constant challenge. Fuel prices are higher, public transit is widely used, and many cities have strict rules about where larger vehicles can go. So having a small electric pod that you can park almost anywhere starts to feel incredibly practical. It also helps that, in several European countries, quadricycles can be driven by teenagers as young as 14 or 15. This gives young drivers a safe and affordable way to move around without needing a full car license. At the same time, older adults appreciate how easy these vehicles are to handle, how cheap they are to run, and how little maintenance they require. All of these things create an environment where a micro-EV is viewed not as a downgrade, but as the right tool for everyday life. This is exactly where the Topolino fits in.
Basically what we learned this afternoon was that Fiat is officially bringing the Topolino to the United States.
Fiat didn't try to turn it into a luxury EV or a high-performance car. Instead, they leaned into the same ideas that made the Ami work so well. The Topolino is meant for slow, simple, low-stress trips across cities where speed doesn't matter. Its tiny battery, lightweight frame, and minimalist interior all help keep the cost down, making it accessible to people who just need something basic that gets them from point A to point B. The design focuses on urban mobility rather than long-distance travel, so everything about it feels built for tight neighborhoods, short errands, and daily routines that don't require a full-sized vehicle. There's another layer to the story that often goes overlooked: the name Topolino. Fiat revived this name from one of its earliest models built between the 1930s and 1950s.
75 kilometers range, 45 kilometers per hour, full recharge in 4 hours.
The original Topolino was also small, cute, and designed to make car ownership possible for ordinary families. By bringing the name back, Fiat is connecting the car to a legacy of simple, affordable mobility. That nostalgia gives the new Topolino a sense of personality that many modern EVs don't have, especially the ones trying to compete on speed, range, or software. And if micro-EVs work so well in Europe, why haven't they taken off in the United States? The answer is tied to the completely different shape of American life. American cities are spread out, the roads are wider, and most people expect to drive long distances at higher speeds. Parking isn't usually as cramped, and freeways often run directly through city centers, which makes low-speed vehicles feel out of place. And that difference shapes everything from consumer expectations to vehicle design. While Europe built quadricycles to solve daily transportation challenges, the United States built its roads around larger cars, faster speeds, and longer commutes. Even the legal structure is different. In Europe, quadricycles operate under very specific rules that allow them to stay light, slow, and inexpensive. In the United States, anything that goes on public roads must meet stricter safety standards unless it falls into the neighborhood electric vehicle category, which comes with speed limits and restrictions on where the vehicle can be driven. The United States plays by a completely different set of rules, with different expectations, different road systems, and a very different sense of what a normal vehicle should be. And that is where the challenge begins. What it means for the US. When the Topolino finally arrives in the United States, it won't be treated like a regular car, and that's where things start to get complicated. Because of its low speed and ultra-light design, the Topolino will almost certainly fall into the low-speed vehicle or neighborhood electric vehicle category, which is a special classification for electric pods that can only operate under specific conditions. In most states, an NEV is legally capped at around 25 miles per hour and can only be driven on roads where the posted speed limit is around 35 miles per hour or lower. This means the Topolino would be allowed in neighborhoods, small towns, gated communities, and certain downtown zones, but not on major streets, not on highways, and not on any road where traffic typically moves faster than the legal limit for these vehicles. So even before anyone talks about price or design, the Topolino comes with a built-in map of where it can and cannot go.
It's time to stop talking about the beauty of the things and time to show you how beautifully simple Topolino is.
And that alone will shape how useful it feels to American drivers. What happens when a vehicle designed for tight European cities suddenly has to navigate America's sprawling road system? The answer is that it immediately runs into a legal maze. Unlike Europe, where quadricycles have their own category with lighter requirements, the United States applies standard automotive safety rules to every road vehicle unless it falls into a narrow exception. NEVs are that exception, but even then, they have limits. They aren't required to pass the same crash tests as full-sized cars, but they do need to include things like headlights, turn signals, seat belts, and reflectors. Some states also add their own rules, meaning the Topolino might be legal in one city, but restricted in another. And because NEVs cannot go faster than around 25 miles per hour, even if the Topolino could technically reach slightly higher speeds in Europe, it would need to stay within those boundaries to meet US standards. This patchwork of rules makes it harder for manufacturers to predict how the vehicle will be used, and harder for buyers to know whether the Topolino fits into their daily routes. These regulatory obstacles raise another important question. Who exactly is the Topolino for in the United States? The most realistic buyers are not everyday commuters who travel long distances. Instead, the Topolino fits into very specific environments where slow speeds and short distances are normal. Retirement communities like those in Florida or Arizona already use NEVs for local travel, and the Topolino could fit right in as a more stylish, more comfortable alternative to a standard golf cart. Resorts and hotels might use it as a transport vehicle for staff or guests, especially in large properties where internal roads don't require high speeds. College campuses are also strong candidates, since students often need a quick, easy way to travel between buildings without needing a full-sized car. Beach towns with tight streets and heavy pedestrian traffic might embrace a micro-EV like this as a low-impact way for people to get around. And in dense downtown districts, where finding parking is a constant struggle, the Topolino's size could become a major advantage. But once you move away from those very specific environments, the limitations start to become more noticeable. One of the biggest drawbacks that didn't make it into the article is how the Topolino handles different weather conditions. In some versions, the doors are optional or replaced with fabric straps, making them less ideal for areas with snow, heavy rain, or long periods of cold weather. Even the closed-door versions offer less insulation than a traditional car, and the heating system is simple compared to what American drivers are used to. Limited crash protection is another major concern. NEVs are not designed to withstand high-speed impacts, and on American roads where full-sized SUVs and trucks are common, the safety differences become very real. A small battery also raises questions about long-term durability. A 5.5 kilowatt-hour pack is inexpensive and quick to charge, but it may need replacement sooner than the larger, more advanced batteries found in modern EVs, and the cost of replacing it could vary widely depending on how Fiat sets up service networks. Another idea worth exploring is the affordability. The Topolino costs around $11,500 in Italy, which feels incredibly low for a brand new electric vehicle. However, the price in the United States may not match that figure once factors like import fees, shipping costs, compliance updates, and state regulations are added on. If Fiat wants to keep the price close to the European level, they may have to adjust the design or build some parts locally. On the other hand, if the price ends up significantly higher, the Topolino could lose some of the appeal that made it feel exciting in the first place. The entire value of a micro-EV depends on it being cheaper and simpler than a full-sized EV, so any large increase in cost affects the way buyers think about it. This brings us to the biggest question of all.
Like the Topolino. So firstly, as you see, Topolino is short. 1/3 of the space of a car.
Will American consumers accept a micro-EV culture in the same way Europe has, or will they reject it as too restricted, too slow, or too unfamiliar? The answer isn't simple. On one hand, there is growing interest in small, efficient vehicles for short trips, especially in cities that are trying to reduce traffic and create more pedestrian-friendly zones. On the other hand, the United States has a long history of favoring bigger cars, longer drives, and faster speeds. Many people may not see the Topolino as a real car because it doesn't meet the expectations American drivers have developed over decades. Still, the timing might be right for something this different. Cities are getting more crowded, people are looking for affordable EV options, and not everyone needs a vehicle that can go hundreds of miles on a single charge. The Topolino might not fit every American lifestyle, but it doesn't have to. It just needs to find the pockets of the country where its size, speed, and price feel like advantages instead of limitations. Whether that happens depends on how open people are to rethinking what they actually need from a vehicle, and whether they can imagine a different way of moving around their communities. And that's the real mystery surrounding the Topolino's American debut. It's really asking whether the culture around cars is ready to change in ways that make space for something this small and this different. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Click the next video for more exciting content.